Economic Development Committee, February 24, 2022.
So we good to go?
We are.
No.
I'll just be setting.
That's sad, because that started on.
Our first on the agenda,
And
so.
I'm kicking and screaming how this is, because all the software I use wasn't being made for Apple stuff. Now, I'm stuck there.
So, we'll go ahead and get the meeting started at 6 o'clock. I want to,
I'm trying.
go ahead and, thank everybody for coming out tonight. Looks like we have a quorum of the 5, folks here. So for the record, we've got Ken Lenshaw, Brandon, Bob Reed, and Judy Manis, and myself, Jeff, and Mike Donahue calling in from sunny Florida, which he's very,
We don't want to listen to him.
very, very meanly reminded us how warm and sunny it is down there, unlike here. So thank you for that. I'll move right to the first item on the agenda is to review the minutes and get approval of them if that's appropriate. So I wanted to go ahead and do that for the December meeting. And does anyone have any comments, questions, concerns about that agenda item? So, okay. Moved, so you're making a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
Yes.
I second that motion.
Great, all in favor then?
Aye.
Staying for not being here.
Okay, so we're gonna put that, and Mike gives a thumbs up on the jazzy little Zoom thing, so thank you, Mike. So those pass, so Martha, you've got that, okay, great. By the way, we didn't have a January 27th meeting, which would have been our most recently past meeting, but that didn't occur because we didn't have a quorum. We seem to have lost one of the members. Where did Bob go? Did he fall down on the floor, or?
No, he's not lying down over here, but there's a candy dish out in front of Laura's window, so for a revisit.
Oh, he's getting candy, okay.
I don't know.
Here we go. So, our first speaker here tonight will be Robin Alexander. She had been previously on the docket, but then due to the rescheduling of the January 27th, didn't make that one. So we're going to let Robin and her associates do a presentation briefly for us to find out what they have in mind as a possible reuse of the mall. So with that said,
Thank you very much, everybody. My name is Robin Alexander. I work with a company called Infinite Equities Group. And what we like to do is work with different communities to find out what the housing needs are, find out what the real estate needs are, find out what all the general needs are in any particular community. We've done projects in Manchester, New Hampshire. 2 of them are currently in process right now where we've done some adaptive reuse. What that means is that we are taking buildings that were once built for one purpose, and then we convert them into what the community needs. So when we were in contract for those properties, we met with the city of Manchester and we asked, what do you need? And what is available, et cetera. So we worked with the jurisdiction to find out what they needed, and we helped to dovetail what they needed into the project that we created. So we have found that working with the jurisdictions ahead of time typically is a much better way to work through any particular project. So we have some people that we know here in Newington, and they had talked to us about a project that's near and dear to everybody's heart here, which is the Foxconn Mall. So I'm going to just, can everybody see that okay? We might have to dim the lights in the front. And can Mike hear on that?
I'm going to aim this around. Mike, you're not broadcasting this to you. You're not doing anything to let Mike see this other than what's going on right here, right?
That's
Okay.
that's what you're getting.
Yep.
So, all right. And I apologize. I do need to make sure that this is
Would you speak just a little louder?
I'd be happy
Please.
to, yes. Let me just make sure this projector is working. Usually you just plug it in like that and it's on, so. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to blind you guys. Thank you, I appreciate it. We may have a technical difficulty here.
Can you do anything to put it up there or not?
She said it
This
was
one's broken.
broken.
I can print out anything you want.
Well, I think I can do the majority of it, without this, but it's never happened before, so I apologize. Let me just try one more thing here. Make sure this right here. There we go, let's try this one.
This will probably work better. Yeah, go ahead. Since there's not an 8-year-old around the house,
Please. Okay, Jonathan.
how are you?
I'm very well, how are you?
Very good.
Yeah, usually I just plug it right in there and that's it goes.
How about you? Yeah. Let's just see if it's. Yeah.
Sorry, guys, give me 1 more second.
While you're doing that, I'll move through a couple, oh, look at that, now we
We
got
got something.
You know, feel free to move forward and see if this goes.
Well, we're supposed to also have a retail sector update, but I think Alicia is not going to be present. Is that correct, Martha? Have you heard any update on
I
that?
haven't, she was going to be on the road, so
What
I
we
would
said?
assume not.
Okay, so we're gonna table that. The budget update is gonna be brought to us by Martha Lowe. You wanna go ahead and do that while we're?
Thanks, sure.
Yeah.
The committee has the budget that has gone through budget committee and public hearing. On the top of their budget packet. And after that, you have the expenses to date, which are pretty minimal, of course. Paul Deschaines' hours will appear in wages, and the FICA associated with his hours appears there. Other than that, there haven't been any expenditures yet, so, of course, we're early in the year. That's the big budget report this month, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you very much. Oh,
Are we in fiscal year, January, are we fiscal year, January to January, or
Right, calendar year.
calendar year? Okay, thank you.
so we got some money to spend?
Yes,
And we should
and
spend
away.
it. All right, that's good. Okay. I think, let's see here, okay, so, we've covered that one now. Report on the Seacoast Economic Development Stakeholders, and that's by Paul Deschaines, who is not present due to a death in the family, but
You
there's
do
Martha.
have the minutes from those two meetings in your packets. They were February 8th and
15.
February 15th.
Yep. Should we just kind of, is anyone prepared to,
One of the big things that the SEDS group has been working on is applying for a grant that will continue to let the Stratford County Planning Commission work with the Seacoast Economic Development Directors, which we're a member of. And that was for roughly $20,000. In addition to that, they are seeking funds to help companies, I've got my notes in the other room. Are you good to go, Robin, or do I?
But you take your time, we're good.
I'm gonna
We're
get my
now
notes,
good to
but I
go.
didn't write.
Okay, so we'll have Robin pick it up where she left off, which was to introduce herself, and
Okay.
and we'll go from there.
All right. My name's still Robin Alexander. With me is Jennifer Faxon, she's the Director of Field Operations. Jim Wisniewski, he is our architect, and Jonathan McCoy, and he works with us as one of the partners. And we'll talk a little bit more about what we all do. And then we will want to probably dim the lights.
Bob, can you turn off those lights, please?
One more, okay.
Yeah.
Can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Excellent. All right, so I'm gonna go through this pretty quickly. But when we've been working with the different jurisdictions within New Hampshire, we found a lot of commonalities between what the issues are nationally as well as in New Hampshire. So one of the major things that's coming up is the housing shortage in New Hampshire. A huge aging population, the technology is getting much better to keep us alive much longer. And so a lot of people are trying to figure out, how can I afford to live when I'm so old, but I need help? And so part of the solutions that we have is intergenerational housing, where people that are fully functional, but they're just older, so they want independence, how they can get from independence all the way through to when they start to need more assistance when it comes to aging. Affordability of housing is a huge issue. And then there's also a lot of underperforming buildings and complexes that are out there throughout the United States and throughout each state. And how do we take that and marry it with the needs of what's going on and the challenges? A lot of communities are slow to embrace, and one of the things I have learned about Newington is that that's a reputation that Newington does have. Not that that's good, bad, or otherwise, that's just the way it is. So, but we've noticed that in a lot of areas throughout the nation. Oftentimes we find that communities say, well, we'd love to be able to have a solution where we have additional housing, or we have a senior component, or we have retail, but every time we add something like that, it draws down the resources for the community. We have to add additional emergency services, we have to add other things. So how can we look at these challenges and come up with a solution? How do we attract workers? One of the communities we're working with on a project said, we would love to be able to have more teachers come into our community, but we can't really have them live in our community because we can't pay them enough to be able to live in a particular community. So how can we work together as a jurisdiction to get the school systems better by getting better quality teachers, as an example? So how can we augment this together? So we've come up with some solutions that work pretty well. And another challenge that we see in states is that a lot of outside conglomerates will come in and basically bulldoze everything and over everybody and what the communities want in order to get what they want, because they have very deep pockets. There's a project in Cupertino, California called VALCO, VALLCO, that's having this exact situation. Cupertino was approached by a very large company, VALCO, that wanted to put in a big mixed-use residential, retail, etc. And so the company came in and said, well, we're gonna do this beautiful community for you. And so it went on the ballot for the city of Cupertino to vote on, and it got voted against. And the company came in and said, well, we're not happy about that. So they came in and they sued, and they wound up winning over a period of a number of years. And ultimately what wound up going into Cupertino was a lot less desirable than what was originally offered to Cupertino because of the expense that the company had to go through in order to build this out. We've been approached by outside conglomerates like Hawthorne to partner with us because we are usually the local favorites because of the way we collaborate with each of the communities. And we met with Hawthorne over a series of about 6 different meetings, and we declined to work with them because their philosophy and our philosophies were at odds. We wanted to preserve historic types of things, we wanted to be able to work with the jurisdictions, and when we asked them what would happen if, you know, we are going to preserve these historic pieces, and what if it doesn't work with the model that you have? And they said, if it doesn't work, we'll just bulldoze it, and then we'll come in and do what we want. And that's not who we are, and that's why we chose not to work with a huge conglomerate. So the solution is to repurpose large, underutilized buildings, failing properties, to design new village concepts and address all of the challenges that we see in the different jurisdictions. And just so you guys know, I had mentioned earlier that we meet with the different jurisdictions before we purchase properties because we want to make sure we can work with them. And that's no different here. So we have the idea of working specifically with the Fox Run Mall. We've met with other people throughout the community and adjacent communities just to kind of see what the issues are. We've met with a variety of people just to find out what are the issues that the town of Newington actually has. What would you guys like to see if you had everything the way you wanted it to be? And if there weren't all these other challenges with, you know, the housing shortages and stuff like that, what are the concerns that you have and what are the things that you would like to see? And so we've put together some ideas and some thoughts. So the first thing is somebody is going to eventually develop the Fox Run Mall, whether it's Morgan Stanley, the original owners and the other people in concert, whether it's a Hawthorne or some other big conglomerate. At some point, somebody's gonna come in. There's an awful lot of pressure. There's a lot of Senate bills and House bills that are looking to push more development because we are so underhoused, if you will. So, as I mentioned before, the conglomerates are usually gonna be outsiders. They could even be companies that are already here in New Hampshire that want to maybe push things through. But what happens oftentimes is that we wind up as a community suffering a legacy of a property that's been built out to what the developer wants more than what the community needs. And then when the conglomerate goes away, we have to say, okay, well, how do we deal with what's left? Or choose to collaborate with a local developer who actually cares about the different communities, who's still gonna be here after the project is done. And we actually are ready, willing, and able to collaborate and to work with and define our own destinies within our communities here in New Hampshire. I'm a native New Englander. I grew up in New England. I did move out of the area for many years, and I've come back because my entire family is still here. The real estate market in New Hampshire is much better than it is in many of the other places, and so we can affect a really nice change by doing it together with each other. So this is the Fox Run Mall, 50 Fox Run Road. There are 5 owners in this particular property, and I'm sure this is nothing you guys don't know. It's about 600,000 square feet over about 67 acres, and obviously this is what it looks like. So to the left is the Spalding Turnpike and the village, and to the right and to the north is the deep port and more of the industrial areas. It's largely underperforming. A lot of it is closed. 2 of the companies have gone through receivership, bankruptcy protection, etc. And then you have, it's mostly pavement. It used to be really attractive back in the day. I remember when I first lived in New Hampshire, coming up here, and the line to get into the mall was just crazy trying to get off of the Spalding Turnpike. And now it's just a ghost town, and it's sad because in its heyday it was wonderful. But this is governed right now by a document that's 1985, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. These are the current owners: JCPenney, Sears, which is now covered by Seritage, Macy's Men, Macy's Women, and Morgan Stanley. We are in direct discussions with all of the owners. And we won't even work with them unless we can get some sort of a buy-in with them that what we want to do is the right thing to do. with the mall. And that, like, as I mentioned before, this is governed by a document that is 1985, and this is the Construction Operating and Reciprocal Easement Agreement, which is extremely outdated. It's 104 pages, it's called the Korea. I'm sure you guys already know this, but some of the other jurisdictions around don't know this. So I wanna make sure that we share as much information as possible. So when we've met with the different people within Newington, from the top to the bottom and the bottom to the top, these are the basic concerns that we have identified. I'm sure that there's more because we haven't chatted with you guys. And we would make a comprehensive list of all of them. So in the event of an industrial accident, what's the emergency evacuation that would be available, right? So these are the concerns that they have if there was a development on the other side of the Spalding Turnpike. Newington is the only remaining deep waterfront port in the area. How is developing out the Fox Run Mall gonna draw down on the town services for what may already be stressed? Okay, residential on the quote other side of the turnpike and voter volume. So these are the main items that have come to our attention when we've met with people. We've been meeting with people over the last 6 months. Many of you may have seen my face and Jen's face over at the town meetings that have been going on with the planning board. You'll see us just kind of listening because we're trying to understand what the issues are, what the challenges are, et cetera, on being able to learn how we can collaborate with Newington to affect an amazing change, not just for the state, but for the people who live here and also for the people that want to live here. So in the event of an industrial accident, obviously there's already an existing emergency plan in place. One of the components that we have, that we've looked at for the Fox Run Mall is a senior component. And so we would adhere to any of the existing plans and potentially even create a new, better, more improved one. And any housing facility, senior facility, retail, any of those must be submitted to and be adhered to emergency evacuation plans that get filed with the state. So we wouldn't be making things worse, we would be improving and making things better. The only deep waterfront port. So if you look at, obviously you have maps of Newington all over. This project is well away from the waterfront port, and because we would be using more current standards, not 1985, but 2020 and beyond, we would have new standards, and this would be built to newer technologies and be a much more efficient property, so it's not going to impact the deep waterfront port. Adding to the town services. So working with any community, it has to be a win-win-win. So sometimes we meet with jurisdictions and they say, hey, you know what, we need a new fire station. We need a new fire engine, and fire engines are very expensive, they're $150,000 to $200,000. So we as a developer would come in and help to identify what are the needs. One of the things that we've heard at the town hall meetings with the planning board is that there's leaf catcher and debris for cleaning out culverts and stuff like that that needs to be implemented, and that's something that we can easily help to provide. One of the things that we've heard is that the old stone school, I happen to like all the old historic buildings. I love them, I love preserving them, I love bringing them back to life. And Jen and I went and toured the museum that's down next door to the Old Stone School, and we loved it. We loved learning about the history, that there used to be tea rooms that were in there. And somebody had mentioned, I forget his name at the top of my head, but he mentioned that, well, the town doesn't really want the Old Stone School because there's maintenance issues and things like that. And we thought, well, what if we could get that to, become a new fire station, or what if we could get that to be an old, a tilt of the hat, if you will, to the old tea rooms, and have some place that the community can come and learn a little bit more about Newington and the history and preserve that. So what if we were to, convert that into additional fire stations or whatever? There's a lot of things that we can do. We can also provide the drain cleaners and the equipment and other identified needs. These are just small examples of what we could do in collaboration rather than just coming in as a developer saying, hey, we want to go do this, we don't care what you want. We 100% care what you want, and that's why we are here before we even go out and say, let's buy this, let's see what we can do with the town. We've been invited here to speak with the EDC and the HDC, and so that's why we wanted to discuss this before we put it before the full planning board. What about residential on the other side of the turnpike? Many of you know that there's already residences over there. Patterson Lane is one of the first settlements, if you will, in Newington, and so there are already homes over there, but this would be a more concentrated village, if you will, kind of like Village 2.0, right? So you already have a village in Newington that runs along Nimble Hill Road, but this would be a different type of village, an intergenerational village, and we'll show you a little bit more about what we kind of have in mind. This is a larger overview. You can see in the upper right-hand corner is the water, the deep water port. You can see all the industrial to the right. You can see to the left is Pease, a portion of Pease, and then you can see the Spalding Turnpike, and of course, right in the middle of all of this is the Fox Run Mall. So if we were to develop the Fox Run Mall, you know, we had a bunch of questions. How do we best assist Newington in growth opportunities? Because I've read articles, I'm sure you guys have read the same articles, where people say that Newington's problematic. I don't think Newington's problematic. I think Newington wants to protect what they have. And I completely understand that. But how do we manage a transition that it's been long unwilling to accept? However, it's probably something that's going to be coming down the pike at some point anyway, when you get big conglomerates like Hawthorne sniffing around asking questions and looking to see what can we do here. And then how do we overcome our poor reputation about being one of the most difficult communities? We love to have communities that can embrace some of the things that need to help the rest of the state and the rest of the citizens around the area. There's lack of housing, and this is something that's serious across all of New Hampshire, not just for Newington. It just so happens that Newington's name comes up, not necessarily in the most favorable light, unfortunately. We'd love to be able to help change that. So what's the plan for the project? So we have several conceptual ideas. Please understand that these are simply concepts. That doesn't mean this is anything cast in stone. This is just sharing with you, hey, this is kind of what we have in mind, what we think would be the highest and best use for this. It involves levels of retail, entertainment, restaurants, residential. I don't like to use the phrase workforce housing that you see up here. We like to call it ally housing, which is any level income housing. And the reason that we like that is because when you have a project like this and you have retail components, you have store clerks, you have bank clerks, you have teachers, and these people earn a good living, but it's not necessarily good enough to live in a community in which they work. And so they have to commute outside. We know people that work in the basic seacoast, but they have to live 60 miles away because they can't afford to live here. So how can we marry this and get every level housing and senior lifestyle and age and place components? How can we marry that all together? And so we can appropriately implement phased plans for building out the Fox Run Mall instead of just coming in and having it bulldozed and then built out over a one-year period. How do we help address some of the issues, and how do we benefit the community by adding tax revenue, by adding senior housing that we've heard that some of the community wants? How do we add to the employment base? How do we bring in more housing that all people can afford, while adding services and also mitigating the concerns that the community has shared with us? So here are some of the benefits and the pluses of working with us in a phased plan that would implement over time and in a scaled build out of the Fox Run Mall. So the first thing is property taxes. And I'm gonna have Jim talk in just a minute. He's gonna show you some of the designs that we've looked at. The basic build out is about $250 million. And when you look at a property that's currently on the tax rolls based at $79 million, and the owners that are in there are petitioning to reduce those taxes so that the revenue that comes in is even less, $250 million valuation just from the construction piece of it is a huge tax revenue for the town of Newington. Multi-generational housing. This is where, you know, a lot of if you only have 800 people essentially in a community, and the kids all go away to college, and they start to raise their kids, and they want to come back, if they're not independently wealthy, they might not be able to afford to come back home. But what if we could give them an opportunity to come home, and as their parents age and need a little bit more assistance, what if those parents didn't have to move outside of the community? What if they could stay in their own community that they've been in for 40 years and still be able to get the services that they need without breaking the bank and wasting all of the wealth that they've built on really expensive senior housing? Brings me to the point of senior housing. Increased in employments. I mean, having a senior housing facility that has all the way from independence, all the way through to assisted care, up through memory care and things like that, that means professional level employment. That means you're bringing in professional employees in the medical field that will come in that are getting much higher salary wages than a simple store clerk working in a retail setting. So these people are gonna need a place to live. They're gonna wanna come and live close to where they work. This is a great place for them to come and live. Added services, we already talked about a few things about adding fire stations, fire trucks, drain cleaning systems. These are just a couple of examples. We haven't met with the town planner at all yet in order to say, okay, if we were to do this, what services do you think would need to be added in order to be able to support something like this? So these are just examples of what we could do and what we've done. This is all level income housing. This also adds to the needed housing units that the state itself needs. And this also rejuvenates the retail sector in a more modern model of what's working. All of us who went through the pandemic, I would hazard to guess that there isn't a single person that didn't do at least one thing online for shopping. And I'll tell you, I was not a shopper online prior to the pandemic, but I was terrified for my family. I didn't want to get them sick by going out, and so I started shopping online. And it was a different experience for me, but one of the things it taught me is convenience. And that's a hard thing to give up. Yeah, it's great to go to the store and touch and feel things, but there's a new model coming through the entire nation. And if you look at these bigger malls that used to exist out there, what they're doing now is they're downsizing the retail component and they're adding residential above it and near it to help support it. And so they're coming back to more of a neighborhood, more of a village feel. I turned 60 recently, and so when I was a little kid, I grew up in the 60s, and so everybody had everybody else's kids in their yard, and once in a while the neighbor mom would yell at me or would yell at their own kid or something like that. And so it was a neighborhood, a village, if you will, that raised the kids. And so we're finding that a lot of these intergenerational, multi-generational circumstances are going back to that kind of village feel, that neighborhood feel. And so we're looking at how do we embrace that in a way that makes sense. So Jim, I'm gonna have you, if you wouldn't mind,
Do
let
you
me
want to
just open
cue
up.
up that next?
Yeah, let me open up another, oh my glasses, because I just turned 60, so now I need glasses, it's a joy. All right, let me go to,
Jim, I'm sorry, what was your last name again?
Wisniewski.
Okay.
And I spell it
Good
just,
luck.
spell it the same way it sounds. So it's Wisniewski.
Thank you.
do you want?
There won't be a quiz later.
Right, so these are this is the PDF that was
Okay.
sent.
Yeah, the first page.
Okay, so,
There we go.
okay. So I'm gonna do that, and then if you want, this is the video. The
Okay.
next one, so this is where you are.
Alright, we'll
This
do
is
that
the
thing
video.
then.
Okay.
I've never met a trapezoid I didn't like.
Yeah, really.
I'll get it to you. There we go. Alright, so, I'm gonna figure out 2 seconds here how to go to this. Hey Jonathan, do you know how to make it go to this screen?
I better.
So you wanna change?
So do I just wanna go to this one?
I'll just go.
Oh, here we go.
Better.
I didn't need you, but it's always good to have
Can we
you.
make that a side panel go away?
Yes.
This one? Yes. How's that?
That's lovely.
Okay.
All right, so again, my name's Jim. I'm originally from New Jersey, so I lost the accent, but I still talk fast. So,
And make sure you speak up too for the benefit of the audience and the camera.
okay, thanks.
Yep.
So Robin, page up, page down. Here's the mall, and this is where we started. What you see on the left is the Sears, and on the right is the Macy's Women, and just off the top of the screen is Macy's Men's. This whole project from the very beginning has been about balance, right? We're talking about different generations, intergenerational living. We're talking about different uses, and what we're trying to do is strike the right balance. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's better. Small. Sure. Yeah, sure. Thanks. So what we were noticing is right now you've got 67 acres of asphalt and concrete, right? So we looked at this site and we realized that our biggest thing to try to balance, in addition to housing and age and generational and activities, is it's all hard. And we don't have that balance of natural setting, right? And what I notice about the mall is if you were to take a walk around the whole thing, it's 1.33 miles, right? So, but no matter where you are on that 1.33 loop, you can't see any distance. You're just blocked by mall, right? So what we wanted to do is to introduce things like air, sunshine, green things. And you can do that in a dense area. You might recognize this. This is Back Bay in Boston, and you see the public garden and the commons up on the right, and that whole swath down, that green swath down the middle is Commonwealth Avenue, and it's nestled in between brownstones, both sides. So we use this as a good example of combining nature and urban setting. This is one of my favorite projects. This is the park at Post Office Square in Boston. It's just a fantastic little oasis right in the middle of the financial district. I used to work a block away from this, and everybody goes there for lunch. This is what it used to be, right? It was a parking garage. So the parking garage still exists, but now it's underground, and this cute little park has been built on top. That's not me lying on the ground, I promise. So this is what we're trying to accomplish. It's a place where people can congregate, feel the fresh air, be amongst trees, and a little activity, right? It's just a fantastic place, nestled right amongst some big buildings. What we're trying to do also is to use this as a gathering type of a space, right? So part of the modern culture of gathering is shopping. This is the Merrimack outlet stores. And we are looking at this as a more friendly, downscaled version of retail. It's not the big box stores that you would see at the mall. It's largely outdoors, so it's a stroll. So we wanted to incorporate things like that into this project. So here's what we did. Again, here's the mall, and it's kind of tough to see, it's a little blurry, but bear with me. In the upper right-hand corner, where we've got the Macy's stores, the women's and the men's. Well, you know, I'm over 62, so. What we are looking to do, again, to add air, is to modify the mall. And what we want to do is we want to cut off the upper right hand, that yellowish image, the L shape in the upper right. We want to remove that and add in the retail, which is that hockey stick shape in the upper right. And the rectangle in the upper left is perhaps an office building, maybe it's ancillary use, medical facilities, urgent cares, things like that for people to incorporate into that professional atmosphere. And then we want to add some green, right? So again, the purple is retail, a la the Merrimack Outlet malls. The blue in the upper left is, let's call it an office building or a medical building. And the yellow in the lower left is primarily residence. So, first thing we did is we modeled what we had and what we hoped to put in. And what you see here in the lower left is the mall with that one portion left out or removed, right? In the upper right, again, retail. Upper left, again, is office. So we're looking at doing something like this. And what you see right now is actually the rooftop of the mall. And the other two buildings aren't there yet, so that's something we could decide on down the road for the most part. And again, I think what we're really doing is not only building some buildings and some residences, but I think we're building a park, right? That's part of that balance that we wanted to strike. We want people to be able to go out, take a walk amongst the trees. You see the big green swath there? That's about 5 acres worth of property. And we're wondering if there's performances there or festivals or just events that the residents could visit, where everybody could visit. And it's that part of that gathering mentality we've been trying to achieve. And again, what we've done here is we've added some height to this, well, we've added some height to the mall, and we located those buildings. What we have here, the lower half of the building, that sort of chevron shape, is the mall with apartments on top, or residential units on top. And again, frankly, between all it, do you want to go up and do that Vanna White thing you do so well?
I'd be happy to do that, yes.
So, I'd like to buy a vowel. So again, you know, what we've done is we've used what's left of the mall and built upon it. So you see that green swath that Robin just traced? That's actually on the roof of the mall, right? So what we've done is we've taken the mall, we've left the box down below, and we've built residences on top, and they're quite generous residences. And there's a whole lot of space. It's like 160 feet between buildings there. It's a wide swath. And again, it's about this as far as scales go. Here's another view, and again, you get a feel for the amount of trees and the amount of park that we're trying to integrate into the site. So then it's a matter of trying to figure out, okay, we've been looking at these white boxes and they're really boring, right? And we know we don't want anything that's boring. We want to achieve the flavor of Newington. This is not the flavor of Newington. This is Bedford-Stuyvesant in New York. Here's another version of a facade. So what we're really looking for is a face for all of these buildings. Is that it? Is that Newington? Not quite. I think we're starting to get to that feel now, but we want to work with the community, and what we want to do is we don't want a repetitive facade. What we want to do is actually build like little neighborhoods, little nodes and modules within the overall project to sort of personalize the whole site. And we've started working with something like this, and I wish we had a brighter screen. But what we have on the bottom again is the mall, and then above that, on this particular building, we've got 3 levels of residences above. What we've done, I'm gonna back up here, and you can't see it too well, but we've got these large glass panels, and they break up buildings. There's one, and then if you moved over 4 apartments, there's another one. And again, there are 3 stories of clear space, open sun, and it's another one of those gathering places, so that you could sort of back off, read a book, you could, there's a lot of room. It's like 160 feet of depth of building. You could have bocce courts there. You could have book clubs, gathering places. And what it is, it's a shared space, and it's outdoors. We really want to open that up to the outdoors as well. This is a view from above, with 3 floors of travel. 3rd floor, down the 2nd floor is wider, and the ground floor is end to end, right? And there's a lot of room, it's a lot of fun there. So this is where this is going. So we've added some storefronts, some facades to this, and again, you see this walking path that is on top of the mall, right? So what I like about that is it sort of gives these residents their own backyard that's not a public residence. To get there, you have to live there. You've got plenty of green, plenty of park, plenty of retail and dining and all the amenities down on the ground level, but the residences, they do have their own, in a sense, private backyard.
Yeah, so it's really cool down here and out here is all available for the public to come out and walk and have festivals and things like that. But this inside version of the green in here is up on top of what is the existing mall now, so that it's a community-based thing. So you could come out and you can have a little picnic here without ever going into the public space if you don't want to. And if you want to come down to the festivals, obviously you can do that. But it's a little bit difficult to see because it kind of looks just one-dimensional this way, but it's actually, this is on ground level, this is all on ground level, back here is on ground level, and then this, all of this is up.
Thank you. So just another view, just to get a feel for this. Another view where.
So this is a great illustration here. This is above, this is the garage, if you will, and then this is down where the community would be, as opposed to the residences.
And again, it's just a bunch of, now we've got a bunch of other images. Did you want to do the flyer on, Robin? So again, my opinion of this project, it's half park, half residences, and half community, right? Oh, wait, that's 3 halves. Thirds. But if you want to do the spinning thing. That's it. This is 5B. So first we were trying to get some drone footage, but it's kind of tough to get the FAA to approve drone flights so close to Pease, so we built our own drone. Can I stop?
Yeah, you can just.
What were the thirds again? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Well, the thirds is a park, right? A public park. It's residences, and then there's the activities, the retails, there's the office building.
Restaurants.
Yep.
Entertainment, community theater, things like that. In
Right.
fact, if you keep it like that, we can talk a little bit about that.
I think you're gonna beat me to it.
So, if you look at this over here, this is the Spalding Turnpike. over here. And this is what would be remaining of the old footprint of the mall. And that would be the residential complex. This over here would be the senior community, and the senior community would be the independent living. Now you start getting into assisted care needs, then you start getting into memory care needs. This would be a medical facility, it could be a pharmacy, it would have all of that available, but still here in the Newington area. This would be the retail component where you might have some restaurants, you might have some retail like the Apple Store or some of the other trendy stores. And then above that could potentially be some of the any level income housing where the store clerks and the teachers and things like that that make less money would be able to still live in the same community. And then down here would be potentially a performing arts theater, where people from the community, the kids could come in and put on plays. If you look at some of the models, let's look at Manchester just because that came to my head. They have the Palace Theater, they have the Rex Theater, they also have a big arena with the SNHU arena that seats 10,700 people. And that's a big draw from all over the different communities to come and see these different plays. And they're getting some pretty big name bands. But what if we had small name bands coming in? What if we had small comedians? What if we had small theater troupes come in and be able to provide that? And this is such a key location because you have New Hampshire that's very, very local to it. You've got people coming from Massachusetts, you have people coming from Maine. It's a great location to be able to draw people in, which is gonna bring in employment, it's gonna bring income from people patronizing the new modern retail sessions. You've got a lot of great restaurants in here, all geared toward the more healthy living. So this is a really great village community all within itself. But it's not just for the people who live here, it's also for the local community that wants to come in and have parties. He was mentioning this area right here is 5 acres of open, beautiful, green, lush. And in the wintertime, perhaps putting in a skating rink so that the kids could come and skate and in a nice, safe environment and be able to utilize an underutilized building right now and turn it into something that people want to come to again. You know, have the lines down the Spalding Turnpike to come in. The Spalding Turnpike. That's the other turnpike. But anyway, this is a great illustration of how you can marry the different functions that are up and coming across the nation, but in a way that would benefit Newington. Because the after repair value of something like this is very expensive, which means lots and lots of tax income coming in when there's a lot of tax revenue going out right now. So,
How do you sequence the development of the three sectors at the same time? Is it sequential? That may be an interesting project.
yeah, I love the question. So when we talk about collaboration, we're talking about working with the jurisdiction, in this case, the town. What does the town want first? Does the town want and need the senior community more? Do they want the residential? Do they want the retail piece? Or do you want a portion of this, a portion of that, and a portion of this? But all the way around, ultimately the park will, all the landscaping and stuff like that ultimately will be coming at the end of it, but we can do it in sections so that by the time we finish building this out, the entire park setting will be there.
That's a question. You talk about a lot of retail and restaurants. Are there other businesses that can go in here? Because,
100%.
you know, there's a lot of space there, and I don't see retail, brick and mortar lasting very long.
We agree with you very much on that. However, we have allowed this to be very fluid so that it can be adaptable. Again, this is just one of the concepts that we have, and we're trying to look at what do the communities generally need to be successful on a long-term basis. And when I talk about the communities, I'm talking about the little villages that we create. And what do they need? So they need residents for people to live, right? They need shopping places. There could be a convenience store here. There could be, I mean, there's a lot of things on Woodbury right now, like Market Basket and things like that they could go to. So they might not need something like that. But what if they needed a small little convenience store that, you know, it's a single mom that's at home, or it's a stay-at-home mom, and maybe the spouse is at work, but she needs to get some milk for the kids, right? Go to the convenience store. We're just trying to look conceptually of the entire vision of what it takes to support a village. And that's why we have them separated out, because generally speaking, you're gonna have business, retail, and residential. And that's kind of how this is mapped out. We happen to have the medical and the pharmacy portion of it because that's gonna be very important in a senior community.
That about sums it up as far as my input goes. I like the idea of using a lot of asphalt and a lot of concrete and adding some leaves and grass and dirt and a little more peace and quiet.
So this is basically a vision of what we think could happen. That doesn't mean it has to happen, but collaboratively we would like to work with you as a town, as a community, to help resolve some issues. And there are some issues. And when you start looking at the Senate bills and the House bills that are really pushing growth and housing and things like that, it's a matter of time before some big conglomerate comes in and just bulldozes it and does what they want. I personally would rather work with the community to say, okay, if this is gonna happen, let's work together to make it happen, and let's look at what the community has said they wanted. And what they told us so far, this meets that criteria. Obviously, we can adjust it accordingly.
Can we go back to the sequencing question again?
Yes.
I think in Bedford, there was some kind of development, whether it happened in retail and housing, et cetera.
Yep.
But some kind of conflict happened, so
It did.
what happened in that situation?
So in that situation, and the reason I know this is because I live about a mile from that particular development, they put in the retail first, and the reason they put the retail first is because there were enough residents around the area that could still support that before they put the apartments in, and then they put the apartments in. They put the apartments along what we call the big road, which would be equivalent to the Spalding Turnpike. They put the apartments back there, and then they put the retail more in the center so that the other people in the community could come in and out without having to go through the residential area. And that's what happened.
But some of the retails never got built.
Some of the retails never got built, and some of the apartments never got built. That doesn't mean they won't, it just means they haven't yet. And there's some pretty big reasons behind that. I don't like to follow the political portion of it, but I have to because that's part of my job, to understand this stuff. So again, we would want to be collaborative with the community to find out how you would want this phased in. And
I would imagine a series of charrettes with community. We present, we get feedback, we incorporate what is appropriate and what people come to a consensus on, and it becomes a community project. Everybody feels included.
But that wasn't done in the Bedford project.
it was not.
I live in Londonderry, and they're putting in Woodmont Commons there. Market Basket Company bought 600 acres of apple orchards, and the apple trees have gone away. But they're spending $1 billion to build a city in Londonderry, and they are phasing it too. And what I've seen go up so far is that the mixed use, the retail on the bottom floor, and 3 floors of residences on the top, and they're off to a great start. I'm looking forward to it when all said and done.
And some of them are done better than others. In Salem, they have a massive build out there, and to me, they just look too repetitive. It's just like, pick up this building and put it there, pick up this one and put it right next door to it, and there's no character, or at least from my perspective, right? And so I'd love to be able, one of the things that we talk about is to maybe have little monuments along the walkways that show the history of Newington, that talk about the different families that came from Newington, and talk about, when this building was built, the stone school, and what was the history. Hey, if you wanna go have some tea in the tea room at the old stone schoolhouse, go to this address, right? And so have like I don't wanna call it a memorial, because that just sounds so sad in the whole, right? But something that commemorates the history of Newington, and let other people know why Newington is such a great place, right? Honor it, and then put it into, maybe we have a little wing here in the Performing Arts Theater that shows about Newington and the families that came here, etc. I don't know, it's just stuff that we're looking at and talking about, because it's kind of cool to know where you live, what happened. It's kind of cool, I think.
I'm sure we'll hear a lot of interesting concepts.
I'm sure that we will. By and large, this is what we wanted to show you. We wanted to be able to share with you kind of the vision of what we were looking at. I can go into a deeper dive on the benefits of working with us and things like that, but I think you can tell we are quite different when it comes to being a developer. We are a for-profit, make no mistake, but we believe that if we can come into different communities and solve problems and make it a win-win-win, there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to profit for it, right? But we don't want to profit in spite of the community. We want to make sure that it's the right thing to do. And I promise you, we have seen 1,000 different versions of a Newington where a great big conglomerate will come in and it would just be another one of these cookie cutter things that has no personality and they're not collaborative at all. They come in, they're argumentative, I don't care what you want, this is what we want, and ultimately this is what we get. That's not who we are. We care. This is in our backyard. This is where we live, this is where we're going to stay, and we want to come up with solutions that are going to be cool, that brings vibrancy back. And in fact, that's the name of our company for this, is Vibrant Village Concepts. And we have 3 principals. We have somebody that has a construction company. We have myself, which is kind of finding the properties and bringing the capital to make this happen. And then we have Jonathan, who specializes in the senior component world. And he has successfully created senior communities, one not far from here in Rye. It's been very successful, and we know how to make this a win-win-win. But what we need is a little bit of, this could work. Let's talk. And that's what we would like from the community, is to at least talk about what could be done to make this amazingly 2020 and beyond. Any other questions?
I just have one. About 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, we did a pretty extensive independent study of potential for the mall area. Have you read that study at all?
I have not, I was unaware of it, but I would love to read it. How would I find
It's
it?
public information.
Is
It's
it?
on the
Sure.
Absolutely.
And what committee groups have you met with today?
So we've met mostly with individuals. We have met with
Jeff and Mike.
Jeff and Mike. Hi, Mike.
Nice one.
So we met with Jeff and Mike. All of this happened, just so you know, a gentleman by the name of Ted Connors, who's one of the selectmen. We met for a cup of coffee and we started chatting about this. We actually weren't meeting with him specifically for this. This came up, and when it came up, we started talking about it, and he suggested that we talk to Jeff and Mike. We did put in a request to speak with Lulu. Lulu was very busy. We have met with John Krebs. We've obviously met people like Dennis Hebert. We met with Dennis 6 months ago, I think, before we even really had a lot of this intact, just to find out about the community. We didn't talk to him about any of the plans that we had here. We simply met with him to say, hey, this is what we do, this is who we are, this is why we're different. And it was funny because the first probably 20 minutes of the meeting, both John Krebs and Dennis sat there, her. And I thought the meeting was gonna be 20 minutes long. 90 minutes later, when we were leaving, Dennis stood up and said, let me help you find a project here. He didn't mean this one, but he was thinking on a smaller scale, how can we help you to help us in our community? And so he seemed to be very pleasant. He said hi to us a number of times during the conversations, not the conversations, but when we come to the planning meetings. Hey, hi, how are you, kind of thing. So those are the people that we've officially met in terms of learning more about the community. The concerns list was, we learned that from John Krebs and Dennis the first time we met with them, when we were just trying to see if there was any opportunity to work with Newington. But we have not presented this to Dennis, we have not presented this to the planning board at all. We've only just started talking. I think Jeff was the first time, he hasn't even seen this, because I think when we first talked to you, it was really more in its infancy, rather than, so we've done a lot more in terms of putting in some time and effort and resources to see how we can work together with the town of Newington to make Village 2.0. You know, sometimes it takes a village to save a village, and I think this might be a really good way to embrace both.
Well, thank you for coming in, we appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for your time and your consideration. I'll put my phone number up on there so you guys will have it and you'll be able to.
I'll just mention, not necessarily from the point of view of the whole EDC, but for myself, that this is kind of a lot of time I do for my day job is working with real estate developments, and to see folks being willing to collaborate with the town versus mandate or versus dictate to the town what you want. It's great to see you're willing to do that and consider what the town might want or desire, and the phasing of it, as Bob was pointing out, you know, phasing it in, that would be good to have you working with us versus just plunking everything down at once, so thank you for that.
You're very welcome, my pleasure. If you guys want to get in touch with me, my phone number is 603-851-2856. My name is Robin, it's spelled R-O-B-Y-N-N-E, and my last name is Alexander. Thank you so much for your time and consideration. I really appreciate it. We truly are open-minded. We really do want to work with you guys, and it has nothing to do with us forcing any issues. It's just trying to figure out what challenges are there and how can we help.
Thank you very much.
Is this presentation available for us to?
It's not at the moment, but since it's kind of out there, I think, let me just talk to my business partners, make sure we can give it to you.
Just a PDF to?
I think that's something that we can work with, and it's Judy, correct?
Correct.
So Judy, let me just make sure it's okay with them, and I'm sure it's gonna be fine, and then, you can provide us her contact information for you.
Excuse me, Jeff, you mentioned that the study was available online that was done about 4 years ago. The
No,
potential use-
it wasn't,
He said it was
2020.
It was published right before the pandemic started, right?
I think
Remember
it's
we
right
had
on
outdoors?
the town
We-
website.
Right, we did it for,
Is it on?
it took about 9 or 10 months for the study. And it's at least 2.5 years ago, and we did have some presentations outside. And it was done by 2 professors from UNH, totally independent, and I'd suggest reading it.
Okay.
It is on our website, some.
What's
It's in
the-
there.
It's in there somewhere.
Yeah,
It might even be under like the EDC header or something.
maybe
Maybe
it is,
business.
If we can't find it, we know where to find you.
but, yeah, just give us.
So do you wanna pass this around for us?
Would
Does
anybody like to see that close up? And
Does anybody
Yeah,
want
there's
to
a
play
lot
the
of
video real
images,
close?
but they're not as blurred.
I think they've heard enough from us.
Okay.
All right,
Thank
just
you
gonna
very
pack our
much.
things, unless you want us to stay for any reason.
I think you guys probably want to stay for the rest of your agenda, because, I mean, this is exciting stuff here. So, assuming nobody, wants to take you up on that, and you don't want to take us up on that, Martha, do you want to go ahead with the,
Yes, back
update from
on,
Paul?
great, thank you. So back on the SEDS meeting, Seacoast Economic Development, they are applying for a grant, it's called a CEDAR grant, part of the ARPA money, to do 3 things. First, $20,000 to continue the Stratford Planning Commission support of the Seacoast Economic Development Directors. Secondly, a $20,000 grant for a targeted marketing plan to help employers with recruitment and retention. And finally, a $7,000 to $10,000 grant for a trades promotion program at the high school level. So that's what they're focusing on right now.
Thank you, Martha. That's, that wraps it up then?
Yes, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. I'm gonna turn it over to Bob Raymond.
Yeah, I meet with this group meets every other Monday for half an hour, and frankly, I've been sending minutes to Paul, okay, because I'm thinking it might mean more to him than this to me. I've never had anything to add. I've brought some of the things back to the committee. I'm not sure I'm the right person to be in on this calls. So, maybe Mark, you could talk to Paul about it. You know, we can keep doing this, but I can send you the minutes, but there's nothing, when I come here, I don't really feel like I have anything to report in terms of what goes on at the meeting. A lot of it's very general state stuff, how we're developing the tourist industry, et cetera. And so perhaps Paul might be a better person to do the call if he's willing to do it.
Thanks, guys. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you.
I missed the dog.
He's in the car.
Okay.
I hope he's not eating the inside.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Does that make sense, Martha? or-
I'm glad to do whatever the committee wants. Can you tell me, Bob, how long are those meetings
They're
roughly?
just a half an hour, right at 11 o'clock, you cut it off.
Okay, and is it once every 2 weeks?
I believe once every 2 weeks, and they cancel a lot of them, if the holiday comes on Monday or whatever.
Okay.
So it's pretty, sometimes you may miss 2 or 3 meetings, something like that.
So that wouldn't be a huge expense if the committee wanted to go that route.
It's a very minor thing, and you might take more out of it, and might have some questions that might come up in there. All right?
Brandon, will you give us more money from the budget for that?
Hey, it's not, but the, you know, it's whether it's worth it or not. Pay somebody to sit on it, to sit on the call, but.
I mean,
So-
I'm willing to,
Because if it's a lot more like a tourism thing, it's kind of not our alley.
I'm willing to sit on it and come back and say, I don't have anything, well, maybe I'll strike goals someday and come back and give it to you, so. If you'd rather do that, I'll just keep on going, and,
Are you saying that you think if Paul was there because he's more attuned with the language
Issues.
that they're speaking, that
Yeah.
would lead to better opportunities for Newington? Or is it, they're talking about the White Mountains and we don't have the White
they
Mountains?
talk about the White Mountains a lot, they talk about, it's an update kind of thing. And it really doesn't get down to all the, what do you call it, development people from the various towns are on there. and they'll ask questions sometimes about specific projects in their town, or what are you doing with this, or we constantly talk about the workforce problems and the housing problem. We talk about the same problems over and over again, but that's their only updates, you know? I mean, once again, I don't mind the half hour, it doesn't bother me. It's just I feel like I'm not, if there's anything to be given, I'm not sure I'm giving you the, you know, the minutes maybe I should just keep going, send the minutes out. And if you look at the minutes and something comes up and it seems like you wanna follow up, or maybe I can follow up on it, I'd be willing to do that. You wanna keep the same.
Great, let's, and so ultimately, what kind of dollar would that cost us to have Paul sit in on it?
Well, if it's a half an hour meeting twice a
Hour a month.
month, yeah, we're talking $50 a month.
Oh,
So
well, then
50
why not?
times
I
12,
mean,
right, $600.
do you wanna try, well, why not try it for 6 months?
Paul will probably tell you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if Paul would give us that advice and say, yeah, this is a waste of time, or me, or anybody,
Mhm.
it's not gonna relate to us, that would, so maybe
Have
give it a go,
Okay.
and if he thinks it's worthwhile and it's justified, then we'll go the rest of this, another 12. Do we need to make some sort of motion thing about that, or do we just?
It could be the consensus of the committee if you want.
Is that okay by you all?
Good idea.
I think you're doing it, though. You've been doing it, you've been doing it for a year.
Yeah, it's interesting, but.
Okay, so commercial development update, that would be, I believe, a report from John Krebs to somebody, right? It used to be from Jerry Coogan. Do we have an update on that?
I don't at this time.
Okay. Next on the agenda is the business newsletter, end of March, by Paul Duchesne. Do we have any update on that?
We do. Paul was looking for newsletter topics. He was interested in what the committee would like him to focus on in this upcoming newsletter.
I mean, one thing in terms of I was interviewing the medical groups, and I got into, we did 3 of them. I get everything response from, come on in, we'll show you around the place, to, I'll send you something, to never call me back. So I've only done 3, I've never gotten calls back from the others, so I don't know about that approach, you know, in terms of what we were doing before, so I'd suggest that, you know, we look at some other way of doing it rather than interviewing businesses. I'm not sure that's particularly productive.
Any thoughts on what would be productive?
Well, I don't know, off the top of my head, I don't know. I mean, I'd be willing to send them a little note on it at, you know, a later time.
Send Paul or the business?
Oh, send them all, see, here's some ideas I had, never had that.
Is that quarterly, that we're trying to do? Yeah. Yeah, I hate, there's a lot of changes with, the, New Hampshire State Center for Disease Control and the stipulations and regulations that they have on masking, and we have a lot going on right now, that would be interesting, business owners that have, you know, customers that are showing up at their doors. I'm just trying to think of something of value that an employee might see if the newsletter went out there that they were interested in. Wild ideas.
I think any pending legislation that would have an impact on Newington would be important. Like, we've lost track of, donor receiver towns, and that's only been put on a shelf. It's not going away at all. So keeping track of things like that, because that would have a tremendous impact on Newington, I think would be very helpful.
So kind of a legislative update as well?
Yeah.
And just things that are really pertinent to Newington, not the whole issue, but
Sure.
like that one is.
Is that for the residents or the businesses, the newsletter?
This is the business newsletter.
Yeah, I think it's right. It's pretty much what else happened in our state.
What about all those questions that we asked all the business owners within last fall? Is anything from that? Was there any updates from any questions that we asked?
Paul is working on that.
Oh, he is,
Compiling
okay.
that to the prior questionnaires that were done previously. Wasn't that, I believe that's part of the overall
Oh, okay.
thing. He's looking to make kind of like like one database of topics that were of concern,
Mhm.
not only at the event we did, but then prior events.
Prior
when
events.
Questions like that were asked. And at one point, I think Jerry Coogan was going around and asking questions, as I recall. And so I think Paul's trying to weave that all together. And he's not here to defend himself or to say yes, no, or maybe to that, but I think that's what I recall. Mike, do you recall that?
I met with Paul, I came back for a week and I was able. You can hear me.
A little bit, you're breaking up a little bit. If you turn off your video, maybe the bandwidth will be.
I met with Paul, I was at, okay, I will.
Okay.
Frozen.
I think he's trying to turn off the video.
Yeah, I'm trying to turn it off.
Oh, you turned it sideways.
I gotta turn it off.
Well, go ahead and try and talk then
I'm
while you're doing that.
sorry, I'm not finding the, I met with Paul, when I came back about 2 weeks ago, and we had this, similar discussion to what you're talking about, you've been discussing here, okay? I met with him for, an hour or so, and, tried to orient him to pick up from where we left off with the survey and also with the articles. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the property tax incentive, RSA 7281, the forum debrief. We had a meeting in here a few weeks ago. I don't know, was anyone else gonna talk about this briefly, or, I mean, you
I'm
wanna go?
glad to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Of course, I wasn't there, so I apologize. Managed to get sick, but John Radigan, one of the town attorneys, as well as Paul DeShane and Jeff Hyatt and others were in attendance. I believe Dennis Hebert, Jennifer Kent Weiner, and I'm not sure who else were there to listen. Thank you, Judy.
I was
Judy was there
Yeah,
too.
Flanagan was here.
Lance was here.
Bob Flanagan.
Oh, right, thank you. And Ted Connors. And they discussed this issue. Should the town put on the warrant the whole tax exempt issue? And at the end, the selectmen decided that more study was needed to be done on the topic. Ted tells me that he didn't believe there was enough education of the topic to, for the community out there yet, for them to be able to vote on it, knowing about it fully. So the selectmen decided not to place it on the warrant at this time.
Okay.
So does that mean then that during this coming year, we'll be educated about it?
I believe so, yes.
That'd be helpful.
Just for everybody to make their own decisions.
Yeah, absolutely.
I am on my to-do list.
Right. Okay, so moving on now to new business, final submission, annual town report for information only. Has
That went in, that was actually given to the committee last fall. It's the same letter that Jeff, I believe you drafted and Mike tweaked a
yeah,
little.
oh, yeah.
And so and it went to the budget committee. And so that will
That's-
appear in the town report.
Great, okay. Okay, Greater Seacoast Economic Development Group, Business New Hampshire Magazine in 2022. That's the thing where we would contribute. Is this to ask about the Greater Seacoast? Are we-
Oh, the advertising maybe?
Well, I'm seeing that, Business New Hampshire Magazine is what I'm seeing here, and I think that's the advertising, that it alternates through one of the 5 communities. Every month is a featured community or every so often in the publication, as I recall.
Right.
We were talking about doing that, and I don't know, did we actually kick in money for that, or?
We do have $3,000 in the line for dues and memberships. That it's listed as ED Committee in Cybor and Chamber, New Hampshire Economic Development Association, and then it says participation in Seacoast Economic Development Stakeholders Groups. And I believe that's where the funds were located. So you have 3,000.
You've had that 3,000 for a few years, or a couple of years anyways, but, are there any other, besides that, are there any other dues or subscriptions that you do?
The Cybor group is like, I wanna say it's under $200 a year. So that's kind of a no-brainer to at least be a part of, and somebody can show up to that. I know Mike has been going, and possibly Karen went, possibly our intern at one point back in the day went.
Are we involved with the Seacoast effort as well as the Tri-City effort? They have those boards. Are we participating in that, or anyone going? Are we a member?
I don't know what the Tri-City is. What are you saying? Is that Somersworth, Rochester, and Dover? Or what is
Yeah,
it?
the whole Dover, Somersworth, Rochester, Durham area has a group that gets together on a pretty regular basis, and then Portsmouth has a group too. And I didn't know whether or not we were at least keeping abreast of what's on their plate as well.
I think I hear you volunteering for that. You good for that?
I'd have to think about that, but it's not a no.
I like it. So I don't think anybody here is saying that we're doing it. I haven't done it, so I guess no, unless there's some other folks in town on the boards of some other board that are doing that.
Just as a follow-up to that also, how about the Chamber of Commerce in Portsmouth? Do we participate at all?
We are part of the Seacoast Economic Development Stakeholders. That's one regional thing.
And that's what Paul Shane is doing.
Correct.
Right,
Paul does that.
that's very good.
The Tri-City one, the ones that are outside of our direct influence, I don't think we've ever participated in. They have a Tri-City one though, I've never even heard of it. But
I think it's, is it their version of a Chamber of Commerce?
I don't know that, they each have their own Chamber of Commerce, but
I think they collaborate though. I think it might be that, I can't remember, because at one point, 15 years ago, I did a lot more business up in Rochester back in the day.
I can't think of her name. The lady in Somersworth was the director of the chamber for many years in Portsmouth. And she would have the answers to that. And I want to say her name's Robin, first name.
Why don't we put that on your next agenda and we'll have information about it and.
See, I don't know any of the particulars.
Yeah, maybe, is that something Paul could look into? Or?
Absolutely.
Okay, then, so that's gonna be assigned to Paul.
Excuse me, one more thing. What I wanted to add to that, Martha, is remember they had, someone presented to us and they had marketing information that they were using. and various communities were participating in that marketing information. And that's what makes me think about that. I think we could, I don't know what the fees are to participate in that.
So the New Hampshire Business New Hampshire magazine was one item that the cities of Portsmouth, Dover, Rochester, and I think PDA participated in. And they had said that we could join, I think it's to the tune of $2,200, $2,400. I don't have the numbers right in front of me.
I think that's what I recall.
So we would have a splash, I think it's twice a year, in Business New Hampshire magazine for that. We'd have to develop the content and, but it would get Newington out there.
Well, I think that's half the battle is to get Newington out there with pertinent information and availability and the advantages of looking at Newington and building in Newington, start a business.
Sure. Okay, so we're gonna address, that's a good point. We'll address that next, right? I mean, that's part of that same conversation, right?
Mhm.
Or am I wrong?
That's great.
No, okay.
Yeah.
And then the restart of the, I believe it's BOEM, Bureau of Energy Management Task Force with Maine, New Hampshire, and Mass. And that, I believe, relates to the wind in the Gulf of Maine.
Yes.
That's starting up again, I've read. If somebody else knows more about that and they wanna jump in, I've read a brief amount about it.
Is Mike still on
I
that?
think Mike is.
Yeah, but I'm not sure his audio, I'm not sure if he's transmitting. Mike?
Good, yeah, he can't tell us he won't go.
Well, he's waving his hand at me.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, so I've been monitoring this and going to meetings and, you know, I hope that, we can keep Newington present in the discussions because there's great potential with our waterfront property and also our transmission capacity and also the possibility of reusing, at least one of our power plants, so. Interested in it,
No,
but it's
Good deal, that's good to, we appreciate you following up on that and continuing to watch it.
Jeff, would you ask Mike if anything has ever come of Newington being a participant with the power people along the seacoast? I know at one point we were looking at that, if we could get ourselves involved.
Well, what Mike was just mentioning is that he's looking to keep us involved and get us there. Mike, I don't know if you heard Ken's question about, have we been able to get ourselves, Newington, listed on the interested party list, like Portsmouth, potentially Hampton and Rye might be on their most favored nation status or whatever they call it, so that we would be considered primary contacts if and when stuff starts to happen. Have you?
The chairman of the board of selectmen is listed as a contact, and we are, Martha and, the chairman of the board of selectmen that are trying to expand, our participation so that we would be in the same status
Thank you, Mike. So we're watching it, we're gonna deal with Ted on that, I guess, right?
Yes, and the selectmen brought it up at their last meeting and are planning on appointing a second person or trying to get a second person on the task force.
Great. Anyone else?
Before we close out, I have a question regarding the process of this. People come in and did their presentations today.
Yes.
But I'm concerned about something. I know they've gone to the mall and I just talked to people and putting a proposal out there, but my question is, what are our better proposals? I mean, are we stuck with this group? Is the goodest they looked and everything I said was nice, but is that it? I mean, let's say they decide to make the decision to go ahead and do something. Then they come in and make the presentation to whoever they make the presentation to. But there are other development groups out there. Why are we focusing just on one development group?
We're not. They just came in today. We're not
I know,
focused on that.
but it sounds like they're down the road in terms of they get pictures and they get their all stuff, they get their stuff all put together. So I don't know, I mean, is anybody else ever gonna come in and say, well, I don't like what they're doing, I got something better?
Great. You got somebody?
I don't know, I'm just wondering,
No,
because the idea of just taking, the first presentation comes in, if that project rolls along and they come up with their thing, we've never talked to anybody else about it, that's my concern.
Sure, and if you have, I mean, obviously it's market-driven conditions.
Right.
So if somebody else is interested in that property, they'll come in and do the same type of thing. I haven't heard of any other, indication of interest. Now, I'm sure there probably is some out there somewhere, and it would be great if other folks came forward.
I mean, I would think if it's such a valuable piece of property that they wouldn't be more interested in.
You're right, and it's not. That's the problem. It's not, it's not this wonderland of greatness over there. It's a dying mall.
I would
So if I would say, if it wasn't a dying mall, there would be a lot more interest. And the fact that I was at the meeting 2 or 3 weeks ago over at the Portsmouth Sheridan, and it was well noted by people in the state that said Newington is a hard town to deal with, and that was discussed. Among other towns, we weren't singled out as the only town, but many of the Seacoast towns are hard to deal with. So,
What kind of meeting was that? You said
it was put out by Paul DeShane as a thing on development in the community, in the Seacoast community. I don't recall the name of it.
No, so but it's commercial and stuff like that. It's not just big residential development. It was about business.
It was about overall
Gotcha.
what's going on in the Seacoast, and it was a presentation put on by some folks from UNH. St. Anselm was the primary sponsor, and it was well noted that there's a problem with many of the Seacoast towns, but Newington was one of them.
What does it mean by a problem with the Seacoast towns? What kind of problems are we talking about?
Everything that was just up on the board. We need housing, we need infrastructure.
Yeah, but those problems exist everywhere, as they said. I mean, there's lots of dying malls, there's lots of places with same kind of problems.
Sure.
So, I mean, I don't think we're special in that sense.
No.
No, we're not.
And not are we more problematic? I mean,
Oh, well, that wasn't the message that came out of that meeting.
Yeah.
So the meeting was, the town itself is hard to deal with. Was the
town
message.
itself is hard to deal with.
Yes, that was the message that was put forth, not by me. I didn't say a word the entire time. Shocking.
It's an interesting generality. It would be nice to hear specifically what we're talking about.
I know, you should have come to that meeting, because Paul sent it out to all of us, and it's too bad you didn't come, but.
And also, I mean, you look around us, there's a lot of people, and maybe that's why the reason why they're talking about Newington so much for housing is because everybody around us has kind of decided that they really want to develop and grow and grow and grow, and a lot of times some of those effects, they kind of spill over into places with space now, right? So maybe
That was
just in
part
the
of the
context
conversation.
of, in the context of who's around. I mean, Dover would take anybody. Dover will give you the land and put the utilities to it. Portsmouth, I don't think that they're that easy, but it's probably pretty close when you look at the amount of development going on there. So,
Portsmouth is running out of room, so
Yeah.
I think, you know, because they're running out of room, they're going to the surrounding towns.
right.
Well, also Dover's developing pretty nicely. I mean, so, you know what happens, Portsmouth, they go to Dover, then they go to Rutland, you know how that works. So Dover must, at some point, it's gonna be a little harder to deal with, I would assume, because, they're gonna get spaced out too, like everybody else.
Right.
I got out of this meeting, for sure, one thing I think we can bank on. It's like, look at it now, or look at it in the future, it's going to happen someday. And it's better to be part of the solution than be given the solution.
Well, the "it's" is a scary thing that she's developed, that we're gonna have some monolithic, you know, company come in and puts, you know, like terrible buildings up and like that, you know, like the big monster will be coming in. That isn't the only other alternative. There are other alternatives to develop also, that are much more friendly than that. And I guess I think we need a larger discussion if we're gonna have that, of this, and I'd hate to see this particular thing steamroll through without ever looking at the other
I'm not
options.
even sure where you're getting steamrolled. They weren't
Oh, I
trying to steamroll, they were trying to come and be collaborative and
Yeah,
chat
well,
about it.
I mean, they're all gonna say that. They're moving along at it sounds like a halfway decent pace. And I'm just curious to see what the next, you know, what the next iteration of this is going to be.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get so far down the road in some of these things, that it's too late to go back and look at something else. That's my concern. But I'll let my concern remain there for a moment, and we'll see what happens next.
Who do you think is underwriting this effort? Is there, or do you think the organization themselves are,
No.
or is there another?
They didn't present a portfolio or anything like that.
Excuse me?
They didn't even present a portfolio. I can't imagine they have. Becker's got the money to do that.
Yeah, they've gotta have something behind it,
Well, you
right?
gotta have something behind it.
Yeah,
They've invested.
They've done
Well,
this
didn't
before.
she say that one of them looks for investors in the project? So they may not have investors yet, but
Right.
this is a beginning stage of, hey, this is what we think the property may look like.
And they've done it before.
Where, you know, that's.
You
She
mentioned
said-
Hampton. They mentioned, I don't remember, that's what you mentioned. I was gonna ask
She
her
said
that.
Hampton, she said two in Manchester, but she didn't mention them specifically.
And one of them in Rye, one of them.
That was the retirement
That was
facility,
the
one of the
retire-
guys. did,
Yeah, one of the guys did.
I mean, I think we need to see what the next
Yeah,
iteration
I think
is.
even to your point, Bob, even if it is that complex, but maybe it's not that scale, right? I mean, that's something even worth talking about. It doesn't need to be in a scale like that and not that large. I mean, maybe the concept's neat, but the scale doesn't have to be as big. And if we start down this road of look at how
And,
big this can be.
and when the investors come in, I mean, it's nice to say, well, what does the town want? And the investors are gonna, I'm sure they got some priorities. I'm sure they'd rather come in and develop A rather than B, because it works better. And I'd like to know what is A and what's B in terms of this thing. That we'd like to know how that's gonna work, because they haven't all worked, is the problem. And investors will do what they're gonna do.
There's a couple things that are a little tone deaf, right? Like, we're gonna put a park where the people from Newington are gonna go over there and walk. That's probably not gonna happen. We should put an ice skating rink that's in a safe place for the kids to go ice skating. There's one right behind the school,
Yeah.
right? So like, you know, it's a little fantastic, but if it was a smaller scale, they need to incorporate that kind of stuff, of course.
So I have a question, I'm sorry, is there a height
There is
restriction on the?
35 feet, which
Molly?
that's beyond. Oh,
Which is-
in the
3
town.
stories or
Yes.
something like that?
Three
No, no,
Three
it's,
stories?
that's more than 3 now, because I think the hotel got permission from the fire department, I think, to go higher than 3 because of the new ladder truck.
It's usually dependent upon whatever they got for gear right now, which makes no sense because that gear might not always be there and then we always gotta buy that gear.
Well,
So the mall really can only be developed so tall, because what they were showing obviously was 4 stories. and
Right, that probably wouldn't.
That would never happen, so, okay.
that
Do
would
we
be
have
like
any
that.
idea of how much they're looking for in terms of development? They want to develop everything. That's why I was going into the sinking thing. Do you want to put housing in? How much housing do you want to put in? Sinking this project is not easy because it's easier to build the houses and sell them, right? It's not so easy to get the commercial stuff in, because that's what happened in Bedford. So I asked the question.
But it's also zoning. It's not zoned for residential right now, is it? It's
No.
just
No.
zoning.
No, it's not, but I'm just saying, I'm looking out,
But they're not selling the houses, it was gonna be rental.
it's
Okay,
all
so-
gonna be rental.
Yes, according to what they were saying, and I don't know any more than what they just said tonight.
I didn't catch
So,
that part, but.
I didn't
mean,
see
it's
it, I
gonna
didn't
be
think.
rental, it's not gonna, they weren't talking about condos.
We're talking about rental
If,
property.
if you remember 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, one of the biggest concerns was the fact Newington is unique. There are 800 people in town. And one of the concerns, right or wrong, that surfaced during that time is losing control of the town. I almost think you were speaking to that once too, that we were concerned, there was concern about there, if you put housing in over there, all of a sudden, they have more people than what's on the residential side. So Newington is very different, and I think we need to pay attention to that. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but we're not the size of a Londonderry or a Bedford or a Dover, and
You just can't
that makes it unique.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you, I would say, let's go ahead, we've got her contact information. If you've got questions, why don't you send them to either Martha or myself, or whomever that you feel comfortable with, and we'll get those questions to Robin and her crew, and they can deal with it. But otherwise, we're gonna go round and round here, and there's really no resolution. I would suggest we
Okay,
just
well,
table this.
I don't wanna go round and round, let me look at one thing.
Okay.
Let's assume, what track could it take, okay? Track, I guess the track it takes is, they continue to negotiate, whatever they negotiate with the mall people, okay? And come to some conclusion of what they wanna do. Okay, at what point do we get involved in that discussion of, what are you gonna do? Otherwise-
Well, I mean, that's when it goes, again, we're going round and round here, because if they're going down that path and they're negotiating, we have no right to say to them they can't do that.
Mhm.
So they're gonna do
Agree,
that.
agree, yeah.
Okay, so whatever they're gonna do, they're gonna do. Now, hopefully, it's gonna be a friendly conversation with them versus, and it could be anybody else, that maybe there are other people that are farther down the path than they are, and they just haven't come to the town.
Mhm.
These folks have tried to come to the town is, in my opinion, a good thing. But if, that conversation were to continue, I think we should engage with them to keep the collaboration going. But it's up to them to come to us, and at that point, they would come to the planning board, the zoning board, or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Obviously, the EDC really ultimately has no power to
Right,
do
I
much of anything.
understand that, yeah.
So,
Do you think it's more appropriate than, Jim, sorry to interrupt you, do you think it's more appropriate than maybe if that group comes back to the EDC, that we have the ability to ask them questions rather than we're just reaching out to one specific developer? Or group or LLC?
What- so,
You know what I'm
so
saying?
you're gonna, what, you're gonna reach out to a bunch of developers in the community and ask them to come? I mean, and that's fine if that's what you wanna do,
No, I just mean if they were to come to us, if other people came to us on it and to ask, or give us a forum where we asked questions or something like that, rather than it be viewed potentially that the EDC is engaging with a developer back and forth, you know?
so we don't control the mall, we don't own the mall, we have no power at the mall. So you're suggesting that we reach out to the developer community and ask them to come in?
No, I'm saying we would be responsive to them, we'd be
Well, yeah, sure, if they were to call and reach out to the town, Martha does that already, Paul would be doing that, potentially Mike and I would be doing that, but I haven't heard anyone else reach out. Now, could be
I
wrong.
do know that the selectmen had in the past and kind of ran into a brick wall. The owners of the mall, the ultimate owner, really didn't want to discuss anything, I think, and we would have to go revisit that, and I think Ted could fill in some information on that.
Now, there are
but that
5
was-
owners we have to deal with, right?
Correct.
Excuse me?
5 owners.
Yeah,
Do all the owners have to agree, or can one owner stop a project?
are you talking about over there? No, I mean, somebody could go in and buy, it's like 5 different condo units.
Yeah,
There-
Seritage could say, I'm not selling my box.
But everybody else could, and then the new owners of the other 4 entities, the other 4 condos could do what they want,
Mm-hmm.
theoretically. Now, there may be some other, she mentioned the Coria regulations of 1984, whatever the heck that was all about. But that's probably what would dictate how that would go forward or
Mhm.
not,
Okay,
in collaboration with them.
okay.
But again, if the town owned that property, that would be one thing, which we don't,
I know.
so there's no,
This is a serious problem, and it's got some interesting, iterations here. And so, I think it's helpful to have them come tonight. I'll kind of be following what's going on here,
It's
so.
interesting to see what they're working on, you know?
Yeah,
People are
Yeah,
thinking,
it is, it was good that they came in.
hear 'em out.
yeah. And if other folks come, we could have them come if they choose to, but they may wanna go straight to the planning board
Yeah,
or zoning.
I just mean in terms of us, just as a board or a committee, interacting with one developer back and forth.
yeah, that's what.
I was just worried about, is it appropriate, but.
Well, she's met with reps, she's met with the various people, so it's,
Not in an official sense, right?
I was here at town hall.
Oh, okay. Because she mentioned she hadn't been to any
So,
board meeting or anything like that, but I assume that's where she
Well,
was.
I think Dennis was at that meeting too with Krebs.
Okay.
so the town is really at the mercy of the mall owners in terms of what's gonna happen next.
Yes,
We
and
have,
no. Yes and no. I mean,
No.
they still, the zonings, they still, they would make an investment, buy out those 5
Mhm.
pieces, and then they'd have to come before the town and say, why don't you change your zoning?
well, they would probably go to Zoom before they bought out, because why would you take a chance like that?
The town has to approve the zoning change,
Oh, I know,
and then everything that they wanna do has to go through the planning board.
yeah.
So there are some major hurdles on their part
Yeah.
as well.
But it's a chicken or the egg, right?
Yeah.
Because if you go ahead and get planning board and zoning approval, I don't know, that plot of land just became quite a bit more,
Well,
valuable, right?
Before they did that, they would put it under option.
Right.
They would get the agreement that if.
Option,
Okay,
So that-
option to buy, and,
And there's one more board now, because the state has developed a 3-person board under the governor that can override our zoning, they,
What committee is that?
I can't recall the
They
name.
can
That
override
came-
our zoning?
It's a tribunal, yeah.
That
I've
came
heard
out
about
of, that came out of workforce housing.
Yep, and they
As
could
a
override
result of
anything.
that-
That's what that meeting was about over there, was that this was coming down the pike.
Which then obviously precipitates a legal battle,
Right, I would assume so.
which is heard from
Huh.
a court tribunal marshaled by the governor.
Do you have any reference to that,
I can get you that.
can you give me that? I never heard that before.
I mean, it is.
I think it's in the RSA's now, Bob.
Really?
Yeah,
Who the hell voted for that?
Legislature.
the legislature.
I'm gonna talk to our legislator.
All right, well,
It's too bad, when you look back at what Newington went through, with the Air Force and the federal government just saying, we don't really care what you wanna do with this land.
I know.
There was residents over there at that point, and they said, we're taking this,
Yeah.
eminent domain, get your stuff out of here, you never get paid back for this. And then, to think that it could kind of happen again where it might not be the will of the residents
Yeah,
and how the place is zoned and what they think the future is of Newington, but the state could still say, no, that is what we want. It's kind of, it's kind of sad for this town.
well, it also makes you look at, think of when the mall first came in. It must have been the same kind of presentations about this rosy future forever, and look what's happened. So, I think we need to really think about what we want.
sure, and let's listen to the tribunal and see what they've got the power to do
Yeah,
to us.
you're discouraging me even further. The world's bad enough already. It's even hitting our hometown.
Okay, well,
It is disturbing.
We're gonna go ahead and adjourn the meeting, or I would suggest that we go ahead and adjourn.
Maybe I can make a motion to do that.
I think I second it.
Please do, or someone.
One of our longest meetings ever, that's not a good sign.
So you're gonna make that motion, Brandon?
Yes, sir.
That'd be great, thank you.
That's a unanimous vote, I think.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
I tell you, it's like that economic development meeting, if somebody goes to that, 11 o'clock comes in, I don't care if there's a nuclear war going on, they're gonna